Alright, awesome, so you made it to Fusion. Now before we can actually get started modeling, let me first explain to you the user interface of Fusion 360. So let's start on the top left here. On the top left here, we have the data panel. This is where your Fusion files are organized and where you start projects, which are basically folders that hold related Fusion files. But typically you can just leave this closed as you won't need it and it will only take up screen space. So next to the data panel you have the file button where you can open, save and export files. Next to that we have the save button, the undo and the redo button, which sort of speak for themselves. Then right here you can see the tab that is open right now with the name of the file you have open. So right now I haven't created a file yet and I haven't named it yet, so it's still named Untitled. So then up here you can see a cross button, which if we did have a design open, we could close it using this button. And right here in this plus you can create a new design. So in Fusion 360 you can actually open and work on multiple designs at the same time, unlike a lot of other 3D modeling programs. So now we can actually close this because we have two open. There we go. And then next to the plus here we have extensions, which are basically add-ons that are made by other people that you can download. Next to that we have job status, which is for working with other people, which you can also do in Fusion 360. Then we have the notifications, the help button, and then on the top right here you find your name with your account details and preferences. Alright, so now let's continue on the top left here. Here you can find the workspace we are in. And right here you can see it is a design workspace, but if you click it, there's a lot of other workspaces. So we have design, generative design, which isn't available yet, render, animation, simulation, manufacture, and drawing. So we're going to spend some time in the render workspace, and then for the rest we are just going to focus on design for this course, because a lot of these other workspaces are really for more advanced stuff. So now we are in design, and next to the workspace button you find create sketch. So the way most 3D modeling softwares work is you start by creating some 2D geometry in the form of a sketch, and then you can create 3D geometry from that 2D geometry. So you first create something in 2D and then you extrude that or do something else using these create tools to create 3D geometry. And then once you have that 3D geometry, you can start using these tools, which are the modify tools, and they can allow you to, for example, give a radius to a straight edge or combine multiple bodies into one. So next is create sketch, create geometry and modify geometry. We find assemble, construct, inspect, insert and select. And we'll look at some of these throughout this course, but for now let's focus on this cycle of create sketch, create geometry and modify. So let's actually start one of those cycles. So let's hit create sketch, and once you hit create sketch, Fusion is going to ask you to select a 2D plane on which we want to create this sketch. So for now, let's select this ground plane right here. You can click it, and now you can see it brings us to a new menu. So up here, all these icons have changed, and this is now the sketch menu. And within the sketch menu on the top left here, you can find create, and there's all sort of geometry that you can use to create your sketch. So there's lines, rectangles, circles, arcs, polygons, and just all different types of standard 2D geometry. So let's grab a rectangle for now. Once you hover over rectangle, you can see there's three types of rectangle you can choose from, and they all give you a rectangle, only the method of creating it differs. So let's click the 2-point rectangle for now. So the 2-point rectangle is going to first ask us to select the first point, and then it's going to ask us to select the second point. So for the first point, let's set that at the origin. Let's click that, and we can drag that out to the size or shape that we want, and we can just click somewhere like that, and that creates this geometry. And notice how this immediately turns blue. That it turns blue means that it is a profile. So it is a sketch profile right now, and profiles can be used to create 3D geometry. And what a profile is it is an enclosed piece of sketch geometry. And as you can see, this is completely enclosed as rectangles are. But for example, if I grab a line tool over here on the top left, and I create some shape like this, that is not enclosed, you can see it doesn't turn blue. But if I grab the line tool again, and I connect these pieces, now it does turn blue, and now it can be used to create 3D geometry. So let's actually use that line tool and make this rectangle a little bit more interesting. So let's for instance make a line from right here to somewhere around here. Let's make that like that. And then maybe even let's make a line from there to there. That looks good for now. So now we can hit finish sketch. And that brings us back to the basic design workspace. So now we've made a 2D sketch. We can now use these create tools to create 3D geometry. And for the easiest way to create 3D geometry, we can click Extrude. And Extrude is basically just going to give a height to a profile that you made in a sketch. So I can just click this, and I can click more of these, even this if I want to. And you can also click again to deselect it. So let's only select this part for now. And then there's this arrow here, and we can drag that upwards. And that's going to give us our first 3D geometry. So we can drag that upwards, and if we don't want to drag it upwards, if we want to, for example, give it any exact value, we can also type in right here, say we want this to be 50, like that. And it also appears right here in the extrude panel in the distance. So this distance right here, I can set it to 60, and that updates here as well. So that looks good for now, I think. So we can hit OK. And there we go, that's already our first 3D geometry created within Fusion. So now that we have some 3D geometry, let's talk about navigation. So on the top right here, you have the view cube. And if you hold the left mouse button on the view cube, like so, you can orbit around. And you can also orbit around by going down here to the orbit tool and holding your left mouse button on the screen. And you can leave the orbit tool by clicking the scrolling wheel on your mouse. And if you don't have a mouse with a scrolling wheel, you can hit right mouse button and hit cancel. That also allows you to escape the orbit tool. So up here in the view cube, you can also click a face that you want to be orthogonal to. So if I want to be orthogonal to this top plane right here, I can click it. And right now I get this orthogonal view of the top of our design. And you can also do that if I orbit around here a little bit and click the scrolling wheel to leave that. I can also click this look at right here. And now I can click a face that I want to be orthogonal to. So if I want to be orthogonal to this face, for example, I can click it, having this look at selected. And that will give me this orthogonal view. Right, so let's get back here. And right next to this look at button, we have this pan hand right here. And if I click it, I can hold my left mouse button and I can pan around the design. And if I click the scrolling wheel, I leave that. And if I hold down the scrolling wheel, I can also pan around. And I can use the scrolling wheel, of course, to zoom in and out. But I can also click down here on the zoom button and hold my left mouse button and move upwards to zoom out and move downwards to zoom in. Alright, so then up here to zoom cube, you also have this home button, and if I click that, I go back to the home view. And you can also go back to the home view by double clicking the scrolling wheel. Like so. Alright, so that's a bit about navigation within Fusion. Now, we've created this sketch, we've created 3D geometry. Now we can modify this a little bit. So something used a lot within Modify is this Fillet Tool. And it's just nice once you have created a design to give some of these straight edges that you will have a little bit of a radius. It makes most designs just look a little bit nicer. So if I select these three, for example, I can now drag down this arrow to give that this nice radius. Or I can also type in an exact value. So if I want this to be a 10 millimeter radius, for example, I can just type that in here. And if I now want within this same operation to give different edges, different radiuses, I can click right here on the plus button within the fillet menu. I can click this plus button and I can select different edges, these two for example, and I can give those a different fillet. So I can give that something like this, which makes it almost look round. So that looks good for now. Let's hit OK. And there we go. That's our first 3D design. That's our first iteration throughout Create Sketch, Create Geometry and Modify. Now there's a few more things that I want to show you. So first of all, up here we have the browser. And this is where all the items within this design are stored. So you can see it as, for example, the sketches and the bodies and everything that is within this design. And every item within the browser also has this eye next to it. And that is to toggle or untoggle the visibility of that item. So for example, here with bodies, now you can see this body is visible, but we can also click the eye and that makes it invisible. And we can re-click it to make it visible again. And we can also drop down here to see the actual body, and we can also toggle that visibility on its own. So if you have multiple bodies, we could deselect the visibility, all of them at once, clicking right here. And individual ones, I can just click next to the eye of that individual item. Then next, down here, we have the timeline or the history bar. And there's also this lever right here that you can use to move back in time. So we can move back to before we created this fillet right here. As you can see now, this fillet tool that we created is no longer active, and we can scroll back and now it is active again. And we can also go back in time and make some changes. For example, this extrude right here, if I double click it, I can change this, drag it up some more to where it is 85 for example, and click OK. And if I now move back to the present, this fillet is also going to update with that, which is really powerful. So the final thing of this introduction of the user interface I want to tell you guys is whenever you start with a design and as soon as you have something, it is smart to save it. So you can click right here, save, and you can give it a name. So this, for example, I will name the UI design, the user interface design. Oops, typo, design. And then you can select a location. And the location is going to be one of the projects that you have in your data panel. And if you don't have one yet, you can just create one right here. So I will save this right here in the Fusion Quick Start course and hit save. And the cool thing is, as soon as you save it once by yourself, Fusion is going to intermittently, automatically save it for you. So if you forget to save and you made hours of progress and then your computer crashes, it isn't all lost because Fusion will have made some backups for you intermittently. So that's it for this introduction on the user interface. In the next lesson, we are actually going to create our first design. See you there.